So I'm going to call the meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. This is Tiger Planning Commission public meeting, and today is November 1st, 2021. Doreen, may we have a roll call, please?
President Hu?
Here.
Vice President Jackson?
Present.
Commissioner Brooke?
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Dick?
Present.
Alternate Commissioner Miranda?
Also present.
Commissioner Quinones? Commissioner Quinones?
Here.
Commissioner Roberts?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Shook? Commissioner K7? Commissioner Watson? Commissioner Whitehurst?
Thank you, Doreen. Ooh, barely just made the quorum. Okay, so next item, communication. Commissioner, do you have any meetings or anything interesting you want to report to the commission since our last meeting? I see none, so let's move on to consideration of minutes. So, commissioners, do you have any? Do you want to share any additions, deletions, or corrections to the October 4th draft meetings? All right, I see none, so I declare the draft meeting approved as submitted. All right, so let's move on to the public hearing of the evening. I'm going to open the meeting. So the meeting is about South River Terrace, and the file numbers are Plan Development Review PDR 2021-3, Subdivision SUB 2021-4, Temporary Use Permit TUP 2021-10 through 17. And the proposal, the applicant requests approval of a modification to the South River Terrace plan development. This is for both conceptual plan review and detailed plan review, and associated subdivision preliminary plat and temporary use permit. The modified South River Terrace plan development will provide the community with 353 homes, consisting of 118 row houses and 235 single detached houses developed in 3 phases. So before we move on to the hearing, I have some required statement that I need to read. First, the applicable approval criteria are those listed on page 2 of the staff report, and it's available at the City of Tiger website under the public hearing section. Number 2, testimony and the evidence must be directed toward the applicable approval criteria listed on page 2 of the staff report, or other criteria in the comprehensive plan, or land use regulations that are believed to apply to the decision. And finally, number 3, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue will preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. And here are some procedure items I need to go over. First, covering conflicts. Commissioners, does anyone of you wish to abstain or declare a conflict of interest? If so, please raise your virtual hands. I see none. Does anyone in the audience wish to challenge any member of the Planning Commission for bias or conflict of interest. There's no public member yet, so if you wish to challenge us for bias, please say so during the public testimony section. Okay, next section, ex parte contact. Commissioners, have any of you reported, have any of you had any oral or written communication about the hearing with persons other than city staff or city attorney? If so, please raise your virtual hand. I see none. All right, Commissioner, does any of you have any of you visited the site of the proposal? If you have, please raise your virtual hand. I have visited the place, and Commissioner Jackson.
It's been quite a while, but I have been there.
Right. And I reviewed the minutes back in 2018. I believe Commissioner Roberts said he visited the place, but Commissioner Robert, would you want to?
Yeah, it's been
Right.
at least a couple of years.
Right. But we all have, so it's me, Commissioner Roberts, and Commissioner Jackson. All right. Thank you. All right, so to the member of the public, if you wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the commission, please state so when you, if you want to provide if you want to call in to provide public testimony. All right, so here's a description of the hearing process. I would like to give a brief description of how the hearing will proceed. First, the staff will give their staff report. Then the applicant will make their presentation. After that, we will take public testimony. So the calling number for public testimony is 503-966-4101. 503-966-4101. So if you want to give public testimony, please use that number. All right. So I would like to introduce staff member, and you'll be Associate Planner, Monica Baladieu, and she will present the case. She will present the staff report. Good evening, Monica.
Good evening, President Hu. Can you hear me?
Yes, and I can see the presentation.
Great. All right, as you said, my name is Monica Baladieu. I'm Associate Planner with the city, and item number 5 before you tonight is the South River Terrace Plan Development Modification Proposal. And so here's kind of a general map of the River Terrace area. And as you can see, number 5 is the South River Terrace location. This is roughly a 79.8 acre site. So here's a quick summary, and I know you stated a couple of these facts already. We have a 353 lot subdivision that consists of the 118 row homes and the 235 standard lots. We have the 8 temporary use permits, and then the highlight, we have the 3.36 acres of trails and parks, kind of roughly through the middle, and that includes that 11.42 acres of the natural resource and wetlands. And then we have 5.78 acres of kind of stormwater, private open space. That makes up the site. And I thought this was a great table to highlight. This kind of points out the difference between the 2018 decision against the new revisions to the 2021 decision. So here's the comparison. And as you can see, we are going up slightly from that 335 total dwellings to the 353. So we are doing a slight uptick there. But generally the open space is consistent. We are going to 3 phases now, but the numbers differ slightly, but still pretty much on track, and the road systems are still the same as what was previously proposed. So ultimately, a new developer bought this property in 2019, Taylor Morrison, and with the changing market conditions, it did not support the concept of the 55 plus community that was originally proposed in the 2018. So Taylor Morrison and their team did a lot of outreach to the city to discuss missing middle housing and what options and what was available. So they reached out to the city quite a bit, and that is what the plan now incorporates, is a good mix of middle housing, and it's kind of dispersed very nicely now through this current proposal. So I'll show a map next. And this is a map that kind of highlights the areas of change against what is being proposed. So you can kind of see the A, B, C, and these are kind of the areas that we have proposed the modification. Other than that, the majority of the plan is the same as what was previously approved in that 2018. So we can go through those certain areas if you have questions, and I know the developers here as well, but we did add some of the kind of row home, you know, triplex duplexes. We took away the kind of apartment housing that was originally proposed in area F there. So I know the little changes and little mixes of this middle, missing middle housing that's kind of put into the development now. Okay, so before you tonight is the concept again and the detailed. We had enough changes to the original concept plan that we do have to bring it before you again tonight. So as you can see, we are looking at the concept and then the detailed that was provided to you. So with the plan development, we have the benefit of asking for flexibility requests. And all right, is everyone hearing me okay? Just got a message, just want to make sure.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine.
Okay, great. So as I'll continue in the plan development, we have the benefit of asking for flexibility request, and that's part of kind of the public benefit proposal. All the open space and trails and parks that they have proposed is offset by some flexibilities they have to ask for. So in that middle missing housing that they've proposed, we have to ask for these flexibilities for the row homes, which is some of the standard, some dimensional standards that we have to request some changes, the setbacks and such. And this is pretty consistent with all the development that has gone on in River Terrace. We also include some changes with the main entrance and then shared access in the driveways. So those were the flexibility requests we needed for the row homes. And then the flexibility requests we needed for the detached homes are for some of the dimensional standards again, which is pretty typical of the plan development. And there is a parking court. So we're allowing that. The regulations there, we are asking for more than the 8 spaces there. So not too many flexibility requests for this plan development. And in return, we are getting quite a bit of parks and trails and open space with this development. So this was a little quick summary, but we can go into detail into any aspect that you like. But overall, staff has reviewed the plans, and we think that they are consistent with the code. And so therefore, staff recommends that Planning Commission take 2 actions tonight. So just making sure we understand we're doing 2 actions tonight. And that would be first in favor of the concept plan, and then second in favor of the detailed plan development, subdivision, temporary use permits. So that concludes the presentation tonight. And if you have any questions, the staff is available and the applicants as well.
Thank you, Monica. Commissioners, do we have any questions for staff for now? Go ahead, Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah, I had a couple kind of more general questions. So one of the things I understand is that under the prior approval, there were some apartment units, and under the revised approval, there will not be any apartment units. I appreciate the focus on the missing middle options, but I was just curious if there's any concern among staff as far as there being sufficient apartment living available in the River Terrace area in general.
Yeah, so that was looked at, and because the code doesn't require apartment housing, we do have this, the zones that are on these properties, and they're complying with kind of the density and the zone. We leave it to the developer to kind of do that market analysis to see what's needed. We are very happy with the basically kind of the mix of the missing middle housing and kind of the flow through the neighborhood. So that is very nice to see, but ultimately no requirement there for the apartments.
Thank you. And my other kind of general question was, so the actual open space standard required is 20%, which would come out to about 16 acres. But I had trouble figuring out what the actual open space for this whole parcel will be, because it sounded like at least one of the areas considered under most definitions of park is not actually added to the open space standard. Can you clarify that at all for me, or am I just confused?
Yeah, those open space numbers can get a bit confusing in how we calculate them. And River Terrace in the code has a section that you can also request for a reduction in that 20% open space, which they have done. And in turn, they've provided these different amenities, such as the River Terrace Trail, and then paths connecting off the trail, and then the path connecting to a park within a quarter mile. So they are doing several of the improvements that are needed in order to get that exception from the 20%. But I believe from my PowerPoint, I have it in there as well. I think it's the 11.5% is what the total ends up being for the open space there. So in typical fashion, most of the River Terrace have requested modifications to that 20% open space there.
But do I understand correctly that 11% does not include all of the like trail connections and connections to the River Terrace Boulevard, or?
No, that area should be included.
Okay. I think I just misread it then. Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Dick, please go ahead.
My question was also about the green space and the smaller park area and more density to add more housing. Did that housing take away from the original amount of acres for the park?
So let's see if we can go back. So we do have, that did not take away any acres that were planned for the trails in the park. All that is still consistent with the original 2018. The only places that the acreage decreased is if you look on this map on like D and H, areas D and H, and that's where some of the acreage was decreased from those open space numbers that you see. And the applicant can go in much more detail, but as they were going through the delineation and the mitigation process for the wetlands, some of that area was not determined to be needed. So therefore it opened it up for potential development. So as you can see, yeah, I think the D and H areas, as you can see, that opened up for that development there. But it's roughly, is it about an acre? A little less than an acre we changed there.
It just seems that you've already reduced it from the 20%, and now you've reduced it again, the open space, green space, park, and trails. And to make more density housing is not something that I like. I would rather see the space remain as green space for wildlife, etc., rather than putting a building there, or 10 or 20, whatever your increase in that area is. So was that part of the submitted from the new buyer to increase, or was that Tigard's idea to pass more density and take away from green space?
So the zones dictate the density there. We rely on the kind of an understanding of the resources and what is delineated to determine what requires protection. And again, pointing out we have roughly 11.5 acres preserved, and that's going to be very nice park and trail area. So I want to highlight that. But also the zone dictates the density. They are within the density range for the zones on this property. So therefore it's consistent with the code.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Miranda, please go ahead.
Oh, am I right on? Am I there? Yeah. Okay. Oh no. All right. Thank you so much. I do have some kind of general clarifying questions. With the removal of a 55 and over community and the removal of the apartments, my question is the concept of middle housing, does it include accessible housing? Because my assumption with a 55 and older plan and apartments is that there's a lot more walkability and wheelchair access, and the addition of row homes, which usually are 2 stories and are not accessible. If that middle housing concept includes accessibility, because I'm looking as an accessibility advocate, that we're going to be losing a lot of housing for those who are mobily disinclined. That's question number 1.
Yeah, thank you for the comment. That's a great one. I would love for the applicant to speak to that details to see what, but typically through River Terrace, you know, we have accessibility in terms of our public trails and sidewalks. So we are looking for that, but in terms of the housing and how that plays into it, you know, we have requirements through our building code, but the developer can probably speak a little more thoroughly on that topic.
Okay, and could you clarify to me whether or not Tigard's exploration of missing middle includes accessibility, or if it is about housing types, like just, you know, duplexes and multiplexes and denser row houses? Is accessibility in those bullet points of what we're pushing to do, or is it outside of the scope?
Yeah, I may need assistance from management to answer that question. I don't know if the middle missing housing study, looks into accessibility. Just from my understanding, it's like income based to allow these kind of different housing units intermixed. So I do not know the answer to that. We can get back to you, or yeah, if other staff would like to
I'm here.
speak to that issue.
Okay, should I
Here.
ask for my other questions from later or whenever?
I think we can do it one at a time.
Okay.
So your question, the missing middle housing, the code regulations are mostly focused on development standards or how the buildings come together. But I was just doing a quick look. I believe that cluster housing and the courtyard housing have requirements for certain numbers of accessible units. So if we have them, they're in situations like that. But most of the regulations in code tend to be around, getting the development right, the form on the property. I'm just taking a really quick look. And then, but that's probably the limit of that. The next phases of the city's housing plan are the more proactive things that we can do, which we have a construction excise tax that we've been collecting that we're going to start to do things with housing. And as the city starts to do more proactive things, we will be looking at requiring more of that as a percentage of the development.
Thank you. My next question has to do with the density and alley access and shared driveways and parking. I know in other developments within River Terrace, there's been complaints about not enough street parking or adherence to parking rules, and wondered how this development matches those previous developments, or has any mitigation strategies for parking strain.
Yeah, so the parking, I was going to pull up the numbers for you, but ultimately they meet the minimum parking requirements. There is plenty of off-street parking available for the community, for these residents. Parking is always a tough one, but ultimately the development meets the standard and goes above in terms of numbers for minimum off-street parking.
And then my last question, and I might need a little bit more clarification as I did not read in depth. I understand that some of the houses will have their entryways not on their street addressed street number. I'm not asking this question right, but what I was reading was that maybe like their door was on the either the side of the house or on a different street than their house was going to be addressed.
Yeah, so I can pull up the figure if needed, but some of those duplex and triplexes, if you notice, they were kind of centered somewhat to like a courtyard in the middle. So those, I believe it's the end or some of the middle ones, we have figures that show it, but some of those frontages aren't actually fronting on the street. So they had to ask for an exception, or that's part of the flexibility standards of this plan development, is for that end unit that wouldn't be the entrance wasn't facing the street in those cases. So there, it's not that it's facing a different street. I can check the figure, but
Yeah, if you could direct me to the right place to look, I'd be happy to read it with more depth. My biggest concern there was just with the rise in having things delivered, if it was going to be complicated or if it was an easy fix to just renumber it to a different street. But if you could get me to the right place where I need to look, I'd be happy as pie.
yeah, and we may, and I'm assuming probably with addressing potentially some of those buildings may be easily identified and the units on them, so deliveries should not be an issue there. But we can talk to the developer as well. Let me check the pages on those, but also some of the figures might help explain too. So the staff report on page 14 is the start of some of the discussion, and it's the row home main entrances. And basically it's to allow the row home units on the end to have a main entrance on the side elevation that do not front the front property line. So the front entrances are designed to open onto a porch in those cases.
Well, thank you very much for your help and direction as always, and I yield back.
All right, so maybe, Commissioner Miranda, we can ask the developer more about that, about delivery issues. Maybe they are more prepared. They're more in tune with that kind of questions. All right, Commissioner Roberts, you are up.
Thanks. I simply wanted to double down on Commissioner Miranda's questions about accessibility. That it's not just roads and trails, it's not just cost, it's being able to navigate your own home, basically. That was all I wanted to do. Thanks.
Was that a question?
It not a question, as because she articulated it.
Oh, okay. All right.
But,
all right.
But the same question, basically, back then.
Okay, thank you. Monica, I have a question. Maybe I should know the answer, but apologize. So since 2018, has the approval criteria for off-street parking changed in any way, or is the criteria stay the same? Because it seems like in this case, the off-street parking design is more tailored toward the particular area where the parking would be. So I'm just wondering if the approval criteria for off-street parking has changed since 2018. No, okay.
That's not one of the sections that we have changed.
Okay,
so there
okay.
shouldn't be anything. So we rely on the developer to kind of show us how they want to meet that. We do have those minimums, but typically River Terrace has proposed in excess of those minimums for some off-street parking. And then we also have the figure for the on-street parking. So there should be all those figures too as well, if you'd like me to point those out or have the applicant go through those.
No, it's fine. It just seems more, I know I'm not supposed to express my opinion right now, but it just seems more tailored. The off-street parking space is more tailored now than 2018. So I like that. So anyway, commissioners, do you have any more questions for Monica? We'll come back to her if needed before we deliberate. So now thanks Monica for now. So now I would like to ask the applicant to present your case. Please state your name and title, and please limit your presentation to 20 minutes. Hello.
Hello, real quick. My name is Patrick Espinosa. I'm with Pacific Community Design. Address is 12564 Southwest Main Street, Tigard, Oregon. Before I start with my presentation, I'll let Curtis Hewson provide a little background in regards to the product changes here. And then, yes, I have a short presentation to share with you.
Thanks, Patrick, and thank you, everyone. My name is Curtis Hewson. I'm the Vice President of Land Acquisition and Entitlement for Taylor Morrison. Our office address is 703 Broadway Street, Suite 710 in Vancouver, Washington. And I wanted to take a quick moment, thank everybody for spending their time with us this evening. We've worked really hard with staff to take this community plan, zoning and code requirements and construct something that we feel is going to offer much more diverse set of housing to the city of Tigard. You know, it's one of our core initiatives as a company to provide as much support and connectivity to the cities that we build in as possible. We feel that as the market has continued to shift, to have an age-restricted community wouldn't provide as a diverse set of housing. Monica did a great job of kind of highlighting our desire to put the missing middle housing into this community and all of the elements that go with that. And I think there's a lot of good things in Patrick's presentation that will address some of the questions that came up. So just ask for everybody's patience on some of those questions, as we'll get to a lot of them, and then certainly happy to answer any questions. But wanted to take a quick moment to thank staff for all of their help and assistance. We did have many conversations with them, and wanted to make sure that we thank them as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Curtis. And again, I wanted to reiterate, our gratitude and the assistance that staff provided us in putting this report together. Working through this missing middle is a little complex, and they helped us quite a deal with questions and, how we could make sure we could provide that product while still, blending into the surrounding architecture and the, currently developed River Terrace neighborhoods and the adjacent existing neighborhoods that have been there for some time. So I will go ahead and share my screen and start this presentation. Okay. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you, Planning Commission, for giving us your time today to go over this project. We're excited to share some of these concepts with you. Real quick, just to reiterate what the city is, what the proposal of this plan development is specifically for. It's for the approval of type 3 modification to the previously approved residential plan development. And as staff stated, there's two approvals we're looking for, one for the conceptual plan review and one for the detailed plan review, which will include the subdivision preliminary plat and the temporary use permits for the model home and sales office. Okay, just a real quick overview of the location of this site. Let's see, get my pointer here. The site is here shown, highlighted, and to the north of the site, we have Bull Mountain Road, and we have an existing connection at the roundabout to River Terrace Boulevard. To the west, our project is bordered by Southwest Roy Rogers Road, and to the east, we have previously developed residential home development here in Washington County. And then along the southern edge of our property to the east, we have future River Terrace development land. And I believe there's an approved application for this already. Real quick, as I'd like to just go over the community plan maps. It kind of helps highlight, what we're proposing to change versus what we're proposing to stay consistent with the previous approved plan development. So here's the zoning currently shown in the community plan. We've got R4.5 and R12 zoning that overlays in our area, or actually R7, excuse me. We're not proposing any changes to the zoning, and we believe the housing that we're proposing is consistent with what's allowed in those particular zones. Here's the wetlands and riparian area map provided in the community plan. Shown here through the middle is the vegetated corridor that exists out there. It's a CWS regulated corridor with a stream running down the middle. Our proposed development with you today doesn't have any changes identified to the impacts. We will be crossing this corridor with the River Terrace Boulevard extension. That's part of the community transportation plan, and installing an arch culvert crossing to avoid and minimize impacts to the creek and the buffer area. Additionally, to go with that resource area is the significant tree overlay. Again, we're not proposing any changes to the work within that significant tree overlay, and pretty much minimizing our impacts to what was previously approved with the vegetated corridor crossing. Here's the community park plan identified in the River Terrace area. As shown on this plan, down here to the southeast of our site is a proposed community plan, and to the north, or community park, sorry, and to the north of our site is another community park currently shown in the community plan. As of now, neither of these parks are in development.
Excuse me, is there supposed to be a difference in slides changing? Because I'm still have your original map on my screen.
Oh, really? Is everybody else experiencing the same issues?
No, I'm seeing the slide changing, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I see the slide changing too.
Okay, thank you. That's just me.
Sorry about that. All right, this next map is the neighborhood park map identified in the community plan. As shown here, there is a neighborhood park that's already built just north of us, north of Bull Mountain Road, and just to the west of River Terrace Boulevard. And another proposed neighborhood park identified offsite just to the east of the southern portion of this project. One thing I wanted to note, because I know there are questions regarding the open space, and I'll show you this when we get to our site plan, is, as part of the previous approved plan development and consistent with this particular plan development, is the developer has decided to build an additional neighborhood park not identified or required by these community plans. It just seemed like the appropriate thing to do, having that vegetated corridor that runs east to west through the site and that forested area, and using that to provide another amenity for the surrounding community and for this development site as well. So that is one of the public benefits that we'd like to highlight that was proposed with the previous approval and will continue to be developed and constructed with this plan. Also here on the community plan is the trail map. Again, the only trail identified through this site is the River Terrace Trail. It's part of the River Terrace Boulevard section, and this will continue to be constructed with this development and consistent with the previously approved plan development. This River Terrace Trail and vehicular transportation connection will allow us to connect from Bull Mountain Road south to the future school site that I believe is under development now. It'll also provide a transportation connection out to Roy Rogers to complete the transportation pieces shown here on this next map. So again, here's River Terrace Boulevard running north to south to our southeast corner. That particular item will continue to be developed per the previous approved application, as will the neighborhood collector connection connecting Roy Rogers to River Terrace Boulevard here at the south end of our site. Okay, so what I'd like to do next is share with you a little bit more in detail of what we're proposing to modify the site plan. Again, just to reiterate some of the things that staff already talked about, this modification is really limited to specific lot areas and changes to the housing types. So as I stated, going through those community maps, we don't propose any changes to the street location or the public infrastructure that was previously proposed and approved. Again, we're going to continue to develop the neighborhood park. It's a public park with a River Terrace Trail corridor, and retain the open space and resource tracks that were previously shown. One of the other items in regards to open space and commission identified and concerns regarding the drop in percentage of open space from the previous approval. One of the things that I wanted to just make sure and identify was there were 2 open space tracks on that previously approved development. Those open space tracks had some amenities, but they were going to be, and they were approved as private amenities that were going to be for the exclusive use of the age-restricted development. So although there was additional open space and amenities on that site, they would be pretty limited for just the use of the residents in this development and not for the surrounding public. The other updates that we're sharing with you, as Monica stated, was the addition of more inclusive housing. And what we mean by that is having some smaller single-family detached homes and providing this missing middle housing, which for the purposes of our development are in the form of row houses. And these row houses are 2-unit duplexes and triplexes that are more similar in appearance to traditional detached single-family homes than what you would consider a traditional row house. And we'll share that architecture with you a little bit further down in the presentation. So again, this is a kind of a copy of the map that Monica shared with you, identifying the different pieces that we're proposing to get approval with you tonight. So as Monica stated, we're going from 219 detached single-family homes and 116 multifamily homes for a total of 335 units to the proposal today, which includes the 235 detached single-family homes and the 118 row houses that are made up of duplexes and triplexes. So this next series of slides will focus on each individual area and the changes proposed for those areas. This is our Area A, as we're calling it. Previously, the approved plan development included 2 condo buildings, and I want to be clear that the previous approval identified those 2 buildings as for sale condos and not apartments. Those 2 buildings were going to be 4-story buildings with 48 multifamily units, again, for sale condos, and some private amenities that will be exclusively used by this development. So what we're proposing here is a group of triplex buildings and then some alley-loaded single-family detached units here on the south end. North is facing to the left on this particular screen. Our next area is Area B. This previously had 18 single-family detached lots that we are proposing to change to replace those 18 single-family lots with 38 row houses, again, the duplex and triplex products. Area C here is along the northwest corner of the site. The previous approval had 21 detached single-family homes. I believe those lots were anywhere from 40 to 50 feet in width. And what we're proposing is 27 smaller detached single-family lots, which will allow us to have, again, another type of product, a smaller square footage front-loaded single-family home that wasn't previously an option on the formerly approved package and layout. Here's Area D. Previously, we had, again, another private amenity and some single-family detached homes. Again, that private amenity was going to be for the exclusive use of the age-restricted development and units. What we're proposing here is 13 smaller detached single-family homes that will be alley loaded, and then 16 row houses, again, for the missing middle product here with the duplexes and triplexes. Area E previously had 6 detached single-family homes, and we're proposing to add no more of the middle housing product here in the 14 row homes with duplexes and triplex product as well. Area F was another portion of the previous development that included the 4-story condo buildings. It previously had 68 condo units and some parking area behind it. We're proposing to add 18 smaller detached single-family homes that are alley loaded. One thing to kind of highlight here is that we have added some parking court areas, and this is one of the exceptions or the flexibility items that we've requested, is to provide larger off-street parking courtyards to help alleviate some of the concerns for on-street parking. And we've also made sure to include rear driveway parking in addition to the 2 car garages for these units facing the road here. In the area G, previously had very similar product here. It was detached single-family homes that were alley loaded. We're using a slightly smaller product here that has had a lot of success in the River Terrace area, and it's a very popular product. And so we've decided to go with this smaller detached home and add 3 more units here. The nice thing about these smaller homes is, again, similar to area F, we were able to add rear driveway parking in addition to garage parking, and again, have a larger parking courtyard here to alleviate some concerns with on-street parking limitations. Right here is area H. Previously, there was a resource mitigation area shown here for some additional vegetated corridor. The wetland boundary and wetland mitigation has since been updated to reflect the actual conditions of the wetland there. So there was a little bit of a flexibility to add some alley loaded homes, which we think will give this, a nice look coming into this development and into the roundabout. Again, these alley loaded homes will have rear driveway parking in addition to the garage parking, and we'll have a parking courtyard to allow for an additional parking space for guests, 1 per unit. And again, that's one of the flexibilities we've asked the city to allow. Our last area here, area I, previously had 22 detached single-family homes, and we've replaced those with the triplex and duplex product here along the north portion of this. This center island was previously front-loaded detached homes, and we've changed those to alley-loaded, again, to provide some more of this particular product. You'll notice the middle units have rear driveway parking to help alleviate some concerns with on-street parking. And same thing with these alley-loaded homes shown here on the east side of this area. They were previously the larger alley-loaded detached product, and we've replaced them with this smaller product that allows for the rear driveway parking. So next, we'd like to just go over real quickly with the conceptual elevations for this product, and starting with the duplex product. This particular product, again, we've tried to create this middle housing product to look like a traditional front-loaded residential home. So each unit will have its own garage. One of the nice things about this product kind of ties into the accessibility concern that Planning Commission had in this particular duplex, isn't your traditional side-by-side duplex. It actually has one ground floor unit and one second story unit. So the second story will have a balcony area and deck area, and the ground floor unit will have the outdoor patio area at the rear of the building for open space. So it creates again, accessibility for that ground floor unit and a look that is representative of your traditional front-loaded home in the front. Here's a view of the street side view of our triplex building. These will have garages located on the side, so the garage doors won't be facing the public streets. And there'll be a single entryway at the street side, and then 2 entryways to the other 2 units along the side elevation of the home. But again, you know, taking that row home concept where we've got one building with 3 units and trying to make it look more like a traditional front-loaded home. This is an example of the smaller front-loaded detached single-family product. These are the types of products that are planned for the northwest corner of the site, those skinnier lots I showed you earlier. This would be a 30-foot wide product, so slightly different square footage that, again, gives some more diversity to the proposed neighborhood. This is an example of the alley-loaded concept. Again, we've utilized this product elsewhere in the River Terrace neighborhood. This particular one has the kind of Craftsman front porch, and these will be garage loaded from the rear. So this will be the elevation you see from the street. A really good advantage and benefit of having the alley loaded product that we've provided is creating a lot more on-street parking since there's no garage driveway drops to deal with on the street. So again, I just end with a overall plan showing the proposed development. And at this point, we would love to answer any questions that Planning Commission may have. And thank you for your time again.
Thank you, Patrick, for your presentation. Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Dick.
Yes, on the sections F, G, H, and I, do those proposed smaller units have any yard space?
And are you talking specifically about the duplex units and the triplex units?
Yes, all the units in F, G, H, and I, they look really small, and you've allowed for additional parking in an alley behind them. But is there any like yard space?
Let me go ahead and open up that presentation again so I can make sure to go back to that particular slide here. Okay, so you're talking about the I and the F and the G?
And H.
And H. Yeah, so this is kind of the traditional alley loaded product that we've been using in the developments from River Terrace, and these have shared access easements on the side of the home. So every home has what we call an active and passive side. So the active side for each residence has, it's a 10 to 12 foot strip of land in between the homes that they have a porch that, or not a porch, but a patio that sides on that. And they have a lot of the active windows and spaces there to use as their kind of outdoor area. And then each building will also have a passive side with limited windows for privacy and whatnot. And so it's very, it's exactly the same as the other alley load product that we've built in River Terrace, and it seems to function pretty well.
A second question, what is the square footage of the smaller density homes here?
Curtis, do you have information on the square footage?
I've got a lot of averages, but in general, the overall square footage has dropped quite a bit. The smaller units within the triplex product actually gets down I believe around 1,200, 1,300 feet. So we kind of span a much broader range of square footages within kind of the product mix that we have now.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Jackson, your questions.
Yeah, I had a couple questions on some of the specific areas also. On area A, I was just curious, it caught my eye that there's the one lot that I think said is 125,000 square feet, which I assume is that grouping of triplexes. And I was just curious what that was.
Yeah, that is the larger lot here. The area A will be made up of these, I guess, 10 single lots. So these will be their own lots disconnected from the rest of the development. And then area A will include all of these row home units in one unit with some pedestrian connectivity and some vehicular connectivity. And those will all be sold as condo units, basically.
Okay, thank you. My other question was related to area H. I'm mostly just trying to make sure I understood some of the narrative correctly. So under the prior approval, there was no development there because it was part of the wetland delineation. So that delineation has changed.
Mm-hmm.
But it said, let's see if I can find the actual verbiage here. It mentioned that, so there's a fee in lieu paid for mitigation for wetland fill that occurred during phase 1 construction. And I was just curious if that fill that occurred was part of the reason that area H became buildable. Does that make sense?
Sure. No, and that's a great question. Let me put my pointer back on here. The area of wetland that was actually filled was roughly at this location, if you can see my pointer here, just north of the creek, and it conflicted directly with this River Terrace Boulevard connection. So the only thing that changed down here is, you know, we've Polygon at the time and now Taylor Morrison purchased this property, I want to say back in 2017, at which point they demoed the existing house, and there was a vineyard that was out here and some other agricultural type uses out here that were heavily irrigated. So our wetland biologist actually has gone back out on site since then just to monitor these existing wetlands. And what happened was without that irrigation overuse, the area wasn't as wet and wasn't supportive of the wetlands that we had previously thought. So we worked with the Army Corps of Engineers and the Department of State Lands to go through that information with them and get the wetland redelineated. And the Department of State Lands concurred with that delineation.
Okay, so just to restate that to make sure I got it straight, the delineation change next to area H did not change due to fill.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to go back to the previous question. I have the square footages up. So we dropped down to 1,232 square feet and go all the way up to about 3,000. So quite a bit of breadth in the units there, with the majority of those footages coming in the middle housing product. There's a 1,232 foot plan, 1,578 approximately, 1,700, and then 2,000. So they step up from there. And then on the smaller alley product that goes up on area C, we range from 1,740 approximately to 2,300. So those footages are also down from the previous lots that Patrick had indicated, with them being wider lots. So when we made the lots or proposed to make the lots narrower, the smaller product there provides some more square footages within that lower band of footages.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. So Patrick, if I understood you correctly regarding the open space, I think you were saying that at least to the member of the public, the stated 1.3% drop in open space may not be actually that big to public, because previously some of that open space were only accessible by certain member of the community. So but now everything's open to the public. So that 1.3% drop may not be that dramatic, at least from the public point of view. Do you know what the actual? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No. Is that, did I understand you correctly?
That is correct. So here in Area A, there was a private amenity space. And then here in Area D, this section now showing alley loaded was another private amenity space. So those two spaces were going to be exclusively for the use of the private property owners in this development with that previously approved planned development. And it was all part of that age restricted concept. So those are the only two open space areas that had amenities that have since been removed from the site. So in the middle here, we still have the neighborhood park that has remained unchanged from the previous approval, and that will be open to the public. And it'll include some play areas and some nature play areas, some trail connections through this wood, and a hardscape connection all the way out to Roy Rogers. And then both of the stormwater facilities, one shown here on the north of the creek and one at the southwest corner of our site, will have trails around them and some trail connections to Roy Rogers and some other community amenities that will be open to the public as well. And those remain unchanged from the previous approval.
So the amount of restricted spaces will be less than the previous version.
Correct. The only amenities that we removed as part of this development were the private amenities that were going to be age restricted.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Commissioner Miranda, you have a question?
Yes. Thank you. In your discussion about the triplexes, specifically when you were speaking about Section A, I might have a misunderstanding about what a triplex is. My assumption is that a triplex is sold as one unit and then is like an income property for one person. But you said that they were functioning as condos. So that leads me to believe that each one of those units in the triplex would be sold individually.
That is correct. And I can probably have Curtis maybe respond to this a little bit better, but my understanding, just the way the layout of these products are, is there's not a clear defined shared wall like your traditional duplex or triplex that allows for that fee simple purchase where you have a property line on the shared wall. So some of the units overlap on top of other people's garages, or there's just not a straight line that allows for an easy definition of a lot that could be for sale, which is why we've decided to go with the condo unit for those particular products. Is that correct, Curtis? Am I stating that right?
Yeah, and I think to answer the question kind of directly, it's not a single home or a single unit that's got one owner occupied unit and then two rental units. They would all be individual units. That would be for sale units that would all have separate addresses and would be separate residences. They would share some common walls, but there would be no association of one unit to the next in terms of any type of ownership.
So it's a unit of 3 row houses.
Yeah, so the technical classification is 3 row homes. But we've tried to change the design instead of, your standard 3 units right in a row with garages all in front and kind of more of a 3-story imposing, structure. We tried to structure them more to function and live more like single family residences. So from the exterior, the look is more that of a large single family residence instead of kind of a bank of townhomes. And then the interiors, with the way that they're stacked, we tried to maximize the living space on one single level to the extent that we could, to provide more of that single family approach. Whereas in a typical row home, typically they're 20 feet wide and very narrow and long, and then have multiple stories, where we're trying to maximize the amount of footage available on one particular level. Similarly with the duplex, instead of side by side and then both being 2 stories with them being stacked, they function as condos, but then you have that accessible or more accessible ground floor unit where all of the entire unit is on a single level. And similarly, even though there is the flight of stairs getting up, the upstairs unit as well is a single, for all of functions on a single level. So it feels much more open and much more like a single family residence as opposed to that traditional row house concept.
Okay. 2 questions. I wasn't able to see any of your slides, so I don't know if there was a slide that related to the layout of those. Then in reviewing the draft CCNRs for Polygon, are Polygon and Taylor Morrison the same?
So Taylor Morrison acquired William Lyon Homes, which acquired Polygon previously. So there's a little bit of a chain of ownership there.
Okay.
Polygon Northwest was in the marketplace and has been for about 20 years. They were acquired by William Lyon Homes in 2014, or we, I suppose, as a former Polygon employee, but William Lyon Homes in 2014, and then Taylor Morrison acquired William Lyon in early 2020.
So I haven't
That's why there's a little bit of a naming
totally get
potpourri
it. Totally get it. So I haven't gotten drilled down far enough to see if there is a rental cap within those CCNRs. And what I'm getting at is my misconception of what a multiplex is, or a triplex, or a duplex, and the removal of all of the kind of apartment building development that is there the ability to have rental homes within this development when it's all said and done?
Yeah, so just to make sure we're on the same page, the original approval was not apartments. It was for sale condos. So I don't want to have the impression that we're getting rid of a ton of rental capacity for the area. But secondly, to answer the question, yes, there is, based on the condos do have rental limits to them in terms of the percentage of the community that can be rented. So while there's some legislation around, can a single owner buy a unit and then rent it out? Sure, but in mass, can you do that as some type of a larger strategy? There is restrictions to the percentage of units that can be rental.
Thank you for your clarifications. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioners, any more questions for the applicant at this time? All right. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Curtis.
Oh, sorry, I had a question. Sorry, Commissioner Hu.
Go ahead.
Yes. Well, first to Commissioner Miranda, great question. So thank you for asking those, because I was thinking them. But my other question kind of piggybacks off of the triplex and how you were saying, like, they're all kind of like in the same home. What does the exterior land look for them? So, like, are they sharing yards? How are you giving them access to exterior space with each unit?
So I can cover that a little bit. Each unit has some small outdoor space. We tried for the most part to utilize the setbacks to provide that space, but the current layout, as far as I understand, and Curtis, you can correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't have necessarily designated open space for each particular unit that's designated to that unit.
Yeah, so based on the condo platting and kind of the rules around that, it's what's called limited common elements. So typically you'll see outdoor space that is available to the neighboring residents, but it's supposed to be limited to those residents. So it's not public open space, right? You wouldn't be able to necessarily come and have a barbecue there, but for the people that lived in that particular building, that open space would be there and reserved for their use.
Great.
In
And then
addition
my,
to the, sorry.
okay, go ahead. No.
Oh no, in addition to the smaller areas on the outside that were reserved for their specific use. So there's kind of specific common area and limited common area elements.
Okay, great. Because that was my follow-up, was what would be available in those private amenities in those particular sections. Like section A had, I believe, private amenities. And I think there was section B too.
So the private amenities were for the previous approval. So when in the original approval, there was a 4-story condo building there. And so the private amenities were exclusive to those residents in those particular buildings. Those amenities wouldn't exist under the new plan because the condo buildings wouldn't be there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Quinones. Any more questions, Commissioner? All right, I see none. So thank you again, Curtis. Thank you again, Patrick. We'll move on to the public testimony section of the hearing. So to the member of public, if you wish to provide testimony, please call in at 503-966-4101. Each speaker will be timed and limited to 3 minutes. Your time will begin after you clearly state your name and address. And since we don't have a sign-up sheet, it would be helpful if you would also state whether you are opposed or in favor of the application. The number again is 503-966-4101. Keelan, do we have any callers?
Yes, we have 2 callers in the queue.
All right. So please queue up the first caller, please. Caller number 1. Please state your name and your address, and your time will start after that. Thank you.
My name is Melissa Sass. My address is 14871 Southwest 164th, and I'm a 12-year resident of a lot that backs right up to the proposed modification site. Thank you, commissioners, for your work, and I understand Pacific Community Design, what you needed to do with the changes, after the study and it not being approved for 55 and over. But I really want the commissioners to think about why we would approve. There's been a lot of talk about this 1 less acre of open space and 2 acres less of resource areas as kind of not being a big deal. And although there was going to be like tennis courts and a pool for 55 and over community in section D and other amenities in section A, even though that's no longer there, that still would have been open space. So I wanted to consider not just allowing the developers to fill in those acres. They could have instead just made that public and not made it private and put in a tennis court or something else for the public and kept that open space. I have strong concerns over the R7 zoning that is most of that land that says 5,000 square feet or more lots, and yet it seems to be disregarded. And when we asked previously about it, there wasn't a lot of transparency saying, oh, we can calculate and get an average and we'll have an R7, but we really rely as residents on that zoning map and having that be the common understanding, and that's really not been transparent. And if the R7 zoning is going to be ignored and we are going to allow this high density housing, then I'm extremely concerned about area D. There's 13 row homes in a tight space with alley parking, no driveway space. And I would like the commissioners encourage you to please look at the site before you consider approving and consider where those cars will park for any of those homes. Finally, for the developers, I'd like to know what feedback you took from the residents that you met with who had a vested stake and interest and intimate knowledge of the area that they gave you from that last meeting, and want the commissioners to keep within the spirit of the intent of the zoning and the plans for the more open space. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa. Before you go, are you in favor or against or neutral on the application?
I'm opposed.
Opposed, thank you. Before you go, commissioners, do we have any questions for this caller? I see none. Okay, thank you, Melissa. the staff and the applicant will respond to your comments after we take, after we had all the public comment taken. Commissioner Miranda, you have a question for the caller.
I would like to know if the caller participated in the 2018 public outreach as well.
Melissa, are you still there?
Tell you, that was the one that I believe it was 2018. If it was the one that was at the church, I have been in as many of the meetings as possible, and there've been many over the years.
Okay. Thank you so much for your participation. That was it.
You're welcome. Thank you,
Thank you,
all
Melissa.
for your service.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to the next caller. Caller, you have, please state your name and your address and whether you are in favor, opposed, or neutral to the application. And after you state that, your time will start.
Thank you. My name is David Nicholas. My address is 14907 Southwest 164th Avenue. That's Tigard, Oregon, 97224. My address backs up to the proposed development, and I will start by saying that I am opposed to this development as it is currently designed. I'm well aware that this community is in desperate need of more housing, not just our community, but all the communities we are surrounded to. However, the meetings that I have participated in since moving into this property in 2015, might have been 16, have all indicated that this would be single-story 55 and over community. Again, I'm aware that this has changed. However, we see the developer has already gone ahead and begun this development before the application has been approved. That might be standard practice. I don't know. I'm not an expert in this field, but I find it discouraging that we were told that they didn't have to meet the zoning requirements of R7, that they were allowed to average that density across the entire property, indicating to me that as big a property as they can acquire, they can average all of that. I don't find that to be a hard and fast rule. I think it's very difficult to engage in this process when we don't understand the parameters because we are not experts in community development. We rely on the city to be the watch guard for this particular type of activity. So again, to be clear, my opposition is that every city planning, the city plan that I read when we purchased this home and knew there would be development behind our home, indicated very strongly that there would be a matching as close as possible in lot size and population density from the adjacent neighborhoods, increasing in density as you get closer to Roy Rogers, which makes sense. It's how we've seen other developments coming in, but that is not what I'm seeing in the plan. The duplex, triplex homes are significantly more density, and we already have significant street problems with all of our residents using the street to park their multiple cars. We see multi-generation living, which I think is actually wonderful, but that means multi-generation cars. I do not see adequate parking for the larger families that are going to end up with teenagers going to the high schools and the schools who have extra cars that are going to be parked on the street, blind corners. And I have not yet seen a traffic study which indicates what traffic will look like when we add an elementary, possibly middle school, to the side of this development. So to reiterate, I am opposed. I don't think density is matched. I think the developer has gone on a development without waiting for the approval. I don't understand that. I'd like to have that addressed. And I'd like to have it addressed why we can somehow average density because it's convenient or fits within the landscape when that was not what was discussed with the community and it was not approved by the community.
3 minutes
and there's
is
been
up.
little to no community involvement. Thank you for your time. I will be happy to stay on if there are any additional questions.
All right, thank you, David. Commissioner, do we have any question for the caller? Commissioner Miranda.
I just wanted to clarify the caller's questions are specifically about the understanding about the averaging of R7 and whether or not a future traffic study about the ingoing elementary school has been completed. Is that correct?
Is that a
That's the
question
first
for the?
summary.
It's a
Okay.
question for the caller.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, those highlight my primary concerns, the
Thank you so much.
population density and the traffic study.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Brooke, you have a question for the caller?
I actually just wanted to thank the two callers because not a lot of people call into these hearings, and I think that the public testimony is a really important part of this process. So I'm just grateful that you took the time to share your thoughts with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so thank you, David, for your call. I will ask the city staff and applicant to answer your questions.
Yeah, President, we have one more caller.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, third caller. Please clearly state your clearly state your name and address and whether you oppose, support, or neutral on the application. And after you have done that, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Tammy Brester. We live at 14973 Southwest 164th Avenue, Tigard, and we are opposed to the. We are opposed, and I have some questions around. One question we have that we would just like to have answered is behind our property. We have a significant retaining wall, and right now they've just kind of cut into the side of the hill and not done a retaining wall or anything to assure our property as well. So we're curious about that. And then we're also, the parking is a huge concern. And so from going from amenities of a retirement community to rows and rows of houses behind us in that part, D is the area I'm referring to. I think that's one of the biggest changes and is really going to impact parking. And they said that they'll put up signs saying no parking stuff, but then what that will do is have everyone parking on 164th because there isn't adequate parking. And if you drive through other neighborhoods, there is not adequate parking, and a lot of them are all parking on the street, and then our neighborhood would be that street. My other curiosity is if the storm water kind of reservoir, the huge one down by Roy Rogers, is included in that 11 acres of space that's being indicated as accessible, or green space or whatever, because that certainly isn't accessible. And actually most of that area where all the trees and the creek and everything is not accessible. It's all heavily forested. We've lived behind it for years, and I would never send my kids down there. So I'm really concerned with that safety and that is not an accessible, certainly kids can play or things like that. I'm just really concerned about all of it. Again, my biggest concerns are parking, the fact that they're putting row houses in where different amenities, and I have attended every single meeting of this development since it's been purchased. Well, I would say almost every single one. And so we definitely oppose what they have changed.
Thank you. Before you go, is it Pammy or Tammy?
It's actually Tammy, T-A-M-I.
T-A-M-I. Okay, Tammy. Thank you. Tammy, before you go, Commissioner Miranda has a question for you.
Thank you so much for calling in tonight. I was wondering what kind of notification you received to know that you should call in tonight.
We were sent a letter, and I attended the meeting, all the meetings previous, so I kept track of like when the next one would be coming. And so I heard that we got this notice in the mail of notice of land use and public hearing. And we're watching it on a daily basis of them starting this plan behind us.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate that information.
Yeah.
Okay, Tammy, I think Doreen needs you to spell your last name. If you would do that, please.
B as in boy, R E S T E R.
All right, thank you so much. Commissioners, do we have any more questions? I see none. So Tammy, thank you very much for calling in. We will ask the applicant and the city staff to address your questions. All right, so before we get to you, Patrick, Keelan, do we have any more callers?
There are no more callers.
All right, thank you, Keelan. All right, so I see Patrick is eager to respond to our callers. So we have 3 callers, all opposed to the application, and they have a variety of concern and questions. I don't know if you write them down all. I think the biggest one is parking. And then, so please go ahead.
Sure, I'll provide a few responses and hopefully clear up some of the information that the callers have requested. First off, we just want to thank the callers. We understand, the development can be hard on existing residences, and we understand all their concerns. And we felt like we've worked really hard with city staff to put a plan together that acknowledges those adjacent residences and tries to conform as best we can to the type of housing that they have in their communities, especially along the edge of our site. As far as code stuff and concerns about parking, I guess I just wanted to provide a couple of numbers, and these are just the stats from our planning application. The previous approved development included 335 units, and that was the minimum allowed based on the density calcs of that particular street layout and open space layout. Our site is proposing 353 units, so we've added 18 units of density. That 353 units is the minimum allowed per the density calculations and the layout and the open space configuration we have. So the maximum allowed is 441 units. So we've tried to be respectful of those density calculations and keep as far down to that low end as we possibly can, and we've done that here. In terms of the off-street parking, I'll address that first. We're required to have 353 spaces of off-street parking. We've provided 1,148 spaces. So we're almost 4 times the amount of spaces that we're required to have. And we've actually added 103 additional off-street spaces in comparison to the previous approved development. So I think we've done well to add a lot of off-street parking options, particularly with the rear driveway parking for a lot of the alley loaded product. And in terms of on-street parking, again, we're required to have 265 on-street spaces, and we're providing 548. So more than double of what's required is what we're providing. And this is an increase of about 63 spaces from what was previously provided with the former plan development. And again, a lot of that is due to adding the alley loaded product into this site in various locations, which maximizes the on-street parking in front of those homes. In terms, I heard there were concerns regarding the neighborhood park area and safety, and unfortunately I don't have the layout right here to share, but I know it is included in the planning application. But Again, that's not being changed from the previous approval. And what we've done, and our landscape architecture staff has done, is make sure that the active components of the park, such as the playground, the nature play area, is located closer to River Terrace Boulevard and the trail connection along the west side of River Terrace Boulevard to provide for eyes on the street. You know, we want people to be able to see into the park and visually see the park activity, whether it's passerbys on the public sidewalk or cars. So I think we've provided a very safe environment. Then in addition to that, we have some wood chip trails that extend into some of the tree covered areas with little amenities along those trails that people can enjoy. As well as a hardscape pedestrian connection to Roy Rogers. So there's pieces of that park that all age groups can enjoy safely. And I think it's going to be a really good addition to the River Terrace community.
I think the caller was worried about kids getting hurt in the stormwater facility. So
sure.
that should be protected, right? So
sure. And you know, the stormwater facilities, you know, this is something the city has worked very hard with their, you know, public infrastructure code and their engineering design standards. And these stormwater facilities are unique to the River Terrace area. And we've built several of them in this community, and they've become amenities to those communities. I've talked to residences who walk their dogs around the trails surrounding the park and circling the ponds, and they love them. They feel like they natural element that's been there forever. And the city actually requires us to provide community amenities associated with those ponds. It's part of their code. And so we try to do that with visual interest, with trails around the parks, or around the pond, sorry, and the ability to walk down into the pond. That's something that the city wants for the community. They want to understand, you know, that these facilities are benefits for the community. They provide not only, you know, this stormwater management above and beyond the surrounding district's standards. It's a very high-end stormwater facility, and that also provides some recreational opportunities. So I think I hopefully addressed all the questions regarding.
I think the caller was alleging that you are building your facility before it's being approved. Is that a misunderstanding?
It is. Basically, we have a approved plan development right now. And like we showed through those community plan maps, we are not proposing any changes to the street configurations, utilities installed with those, that infrastructure in the streets and the ponds. So we have public facility infrastructure permits for those streets based on the previous layout, and that's what's being built right now. So the things that aren't being constructed are items specific to this plan development approval, such as the alleys that we've added in some of those areas.
And just going back to your first point about you're only building the minimum allowed. So R7 averaging is allowed by code. So that's what the law says you can do. Sure. So okay. Yes. And one more thing I have in my note is one caller was talking about her retaining wall. Do you have any idea?
Sure. And I think I know that area of the site. I think it's, I want to say maybe south of the creek along the east side. But yeah, so there is grading on that slope at the rear of the lots there. That grading is been monitored by our geotechnical engineer to ensure stability of the neighboring residences. And, you know, at this point, we don't have an approved plan with the city to build any retaining walls there. And I think that's at this point still to be determined at the rear of those properties. But whatever does get constructed will be approved by the city and approved by our geotechnical engineer to ensure stability of our lots and the adjacent lots.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I think that's all I have in my notes. All right, commissioners, do you have any questions either for city staff or applicant at this point? Commissioner Miranda, please go ahead.
There was just the concern about the future elementary school plan and any traffic study or speculation around that was wanted to be addressed. And I was wondering if the city had the ability to explain averaging R7 at one of those meetings if we ever have them again. Thank you.
Yeah, I can speak to the zoning, and just to clarify, the property is about split. It's R7 and R12. So we have the 5,000 square foot lots, and then we also have the 3,050 square foot lots. So as a benefit for the planned developments, and this is throughout the city, if you propose a planned development, you are allowed to kind of blend and do and add that housing as needed. So we just look that the density calculation is done correctly and it's kind of averaged out. So yes, we can explain that better to the public. It is a little complicated how it's calculated, but those calculations are always included in our findings and in the applicant materials. And I can have Tom if you'd like to add anything to that.
Yeah, and I realized I did it again last time. I always forget to introduce myself and I just come barging in, but I'm Tom McGuire. I'm the Assistant Community Development Director. Yeah, for the commission, we've had a conversation about this in the past, just generically about a planned development, and that's what a planned development is, and that's what the planned development allows. You wouldn't have all of that open space, the park, the trail amenities. You wouldn't have all of those amenities if this was a straight subdivision. If they were just if they just came in to meet all of the basic development standards of an R7 subdivision, you'd have streets, roads, utilities, and houses on lots. You wouldn't have anything else because they're not required to do that. So the whole reason why we get to do this and have all of these trails and amenities is because it's a planned development is sort of making a deal with the developer. You do all those amenities for us, we'll give you flexibility in the lot sizes and the products of houses that you build. And in this case, as throughout River Terrace, I mean, this is exactly how the rest of River Terrace has been developed as well. And why there's a mix of large and small size single detached houses, attached product, apartment complex. There's an apartment complex to the north. And that's why, the previous one had a 3 or 4 story, basically condominium building that looked like an apartment complex. And so we look at those kinds of trade-offs, and then we try to work with the developer to try to minimize impacts, such as parking, as they very clearly stated. They're providing a lot of parking beyond what the code requires. So, and the statement about going beyond the R7, just again, a reminder for planned developments, the R7, R12, those things really just become the things that help us calculate the density. So we get to figure out how many, we use that minimum lot size basically to figure out how many units they're allowed to have. And then through the plan development, they can adjust the sizes of lots as long as they don't go over the total. And so, if you look at what they're proposing to actually change, the majority of the change is additional single detached houses. Looking as if I remember from their table, the attached units from the previous approval to now is 1 unit, I believe. Everything else is additional single detached houses. So also keep that in mind. What was there was a second part of that question, President Hu, and I'm forgetting what that was. Besides the density plan development.
Is if there was a traffic study regarding the elementary school.
Yes, and that's why Jeremy's face just popped up here. So.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. Jeremy Tamargo, engineer with the city. So yes, there was a traffic study that was submitted in conjunction with the land use application for the Art Ruckin Elementary School. So if you want a copy of that or would like to review that, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call, and I'd be happy to provide that.
And I can butt in a little bit and go beyond that even a little bit more, because why would River Terrace, this particular change, not have to do a new traffic study? Well, when we do the community planning for the River Terrace area, we look at what is the total density that all of the zones were applying, what would be a complete build out, maxing out the density, how many residences would that be? And we get a number of units, and then we build in the collectors and the arterials, and we look at the traffic flow, and all that gets designed into the community plan before any development happens. And so situations like this project is simply filling in those spaces between the collectors and the arterials and putting in the local streets. So all of the planning we did in the community plan is based on traffic generation that's going to fit the system that we're creating. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And so just make sure I understand, if the builder just build according to the current code, they will be allowed to build up to 418 units anyway, right? And they're actually now only proposing 353. Is that a fair summary? Okay.
That's correct. Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right, Commissioner Dick, you have a question?
I do. I want to thank the three callers, Melissa, David, and Tammy, who did call in. And what I heard in the beginning of each of their conversations was the fact that they all thought that the 55 and older community was still going on. And so I think there must be some kind of a misstep or a loss somewhere in there, that they didn't know it was changed to a new plan and the 55 and older was not going to be there. And I also have a secondary question. What happened to that community? Why wasn't it approved? Money.
Well, before the applicant, if they want to respond to that, before they respond, I just, your terminology, it was approved. I mean, that was the original plan development that was approved in 2018. So I would defer to the actual developers, the applicants, I'm sorry, to respond to why they are proposing this type of a change.
Yeah, so as we looked at the marketplace and the continued lack of available for sale housing, we made the determination that providing a much more diverse set of housing that was available to the general public to serve the continued kind of lack of housing supply was a better fit and was in better alignment with the community plan. And through our discussion with staff, felt that would be a better route for this particular community. There's, in addition, even though it was approved, there is a significant amount of topography to this community. And typically when we build 55 and older communities, we try to do it in areas that are as flat as possible. With the topography comes things like a lot of steps to front doors, and makes ADA routes more difficult to achieve. And just from an overall accessibility standpoint, planning a 55 and older community in an area with less topography is preferable. So when the new team got in and kind of evaluated things, you know, as we look at each community holistically, trying to provide the best possible outcome, and not only for us as a developer, but for the community at large. Given the direct adjacency to an elementary school, we thought that providing as many families the opportunity to live close to that elementary school outweighed the benefits of a 55 and older community with a bunch of topography. So I think that really went into our analysis and was one of the main driving forces behind the change.
That's interesting. I had never heard about the topography before. It just seemed that each of the callers had that as a concern as well, and so I just wanted to make sure that got addressed, and how they missed, I'm not sure, some kind of a disconnect of when all of that changed and when it was put out there for them in the current meetings, community meetings, to have that changed. So thank you very much.
So Commissioner Miranda, you have more questions?
Yes, I just wanted to quickly continue to advocate for our callers and comment that our new City of Tigard website is a lot more accessible than it's ever been starting today, and that's amazing. But if our constituents callers wanted to get to Jeremy and the traffic study, how would they, and I guess this is to staff, how would they get his information or get that particular product? Would they need to rewatch this video and catch his name and then email him directly? Can there be a link to documents from our meetings on our meeting site? I just want it to be continue to be easy for people to get the information that they're asking for. And that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, I can jump in here. We have a River Terrace website that is dedicated, and there's a link on that website for updates and development in that community. If you click on that link, we have a handy map that kind of, I think I had in my slide as well, and it's numbered. And then down below, we have all the applicant materials, final decisions once we issue them, and much of the electronic material. So regarding this particular application, it's at the very top of that site under the map, and you'll have the notice that was sent out to the public, and then you'll also have the applicant's material. So if you click on that link, we have everything available to the public. So we have the traffic study, we have the full set of plans, the narrative that was provided by the applicant. So everything is available to the public, and we want to make sure any public member that wants to see all that material, we have it available. So we've been doing this throughout many of the River Terrace projects. So, and in that, I believe Jeremy's contact information is also on there. But if by chance my contact information, so yeah, they would reach out to me and we could get that to them.
And I would also add or point out, as you were saying about the new city's website, there's a link that's pretty easy to find that has the staff directory, and you can look him up, or me or Monica, by name, and our phone number and email, all those things are available a click away through the city website staff directory.
All right, Commissioner Miranda, is that good?
Absolutely, I will put my hand down.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Quinones, you put your hand down now, so.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to ask my question. I'm good.
Okay, so commissioners, Commissioner Jackson, Brooke, or Roberts, do you have questions for the staff and or applicant? Last chance before we go into deliberation. Commissioner Roberts.
I'm having connection issues. No questions here. Thank you.
All right. So with that, I'm going to close the public hearing and we're going to deliberation. Commissioners, your thoughts? Oops, sorry. Okay, Commissioner Dick, go ahead.
I kind of agree with the callers. I know I can't vote, but they seem to think the timeline that this changed was really quickly, and they had thought the other kind of development was coming in, which is a concern for me. How did they not know if they were attending those meetings? So with that being said, I don't like all the density. Like in I, the section of I that is next to a wetlands area. I agree that someone said, why couldn't they have built tennis courts there instead? Something the community could use instead of really tiny homes that offer like a city, instead of suburbia, downtown apartment living, basically. So that's just my opinion. I'm all for more green space. Once it's gone, you can never get it back. And we all know that's how I feel. So just wanted to reiterate that one more time. And I also was just really concerned about none of the callers who opposed it seemed to understand when the timeline, when it changed from 55 and over that they thought would be there to row houses that they didn't expect. So I guess it's a timing issue there, and I'm not sure of that timeline, but I think those were really valid items that they listed. That, and hearing about the green space, though, that what was added, it's just that section I that I oppose. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thanks. Commissioner Quinones, your thought.
Yeah, just something doesn't sit right with this change for me. And hearing what the callers are saying and putting all of the information together, I am concerned with the loss of the 55 and up community, especially knowing that there's an apartment complex in the triangle that these folks got basically their eviction notice from, they thought that they were renting in a home in their apartment for a set amount of time, and that they were going to retire and live there, and they got okey doked, and now they're going to be losing their home. So this would have solved a little bit of an issue. I mean, I don't know how affordability wise, but I feel like really sad that that's been switched. If there was a sense of community that was being built around that 55 and up community. And then the second thought is, if you're going to cater to families that would live near an elementary school and a middle school, then having houses that have triplex and building on top of each other like that, and not having outdoor space for children is not smart. You are not building for those family. You are building to stack people together. It is not a quality of life. So I'm having a hard time being okay with this change.
Okay, Commissioner Jackson.
I think I find myself kind of on the opposite end. When I was first reviewing the materials, I had some major apprehensions about the loss of, a marginal loss of green space compared to the prior approval, and the loss of the apartments. The way I was hearing things was not so much that there was a shock to the neighbors as far as they were counting on having a 55 up neighborhood next to them and having their families live there or something like that. It was more of a question of the additional 18 units being added, which I understand their trepidation about that, but I don't think it was a question of it being a complete shock to what they were promised or what they were planning their lives around. I guess from my perspective, in a parcel that's going to contain 330 some units, adding 18 is unfortunate from the standpoint of losing green space, but as a change in density is fairly minimal, especially when the 353 units that are proposed now is actually the minimum that code requires. So I guess I heard the justifications for some of my early concerns a little differently than some of the other commissioners did, but I actually am much more in favor of it now than I was when I was just doing the readings.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. Commissioner Brooke, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with Commissioner Jackson. I originally was a little confused about a couple different elements, but I'm really grateful for the thorough explanation both from Tom and from the applicant. I think I understand better what is going into that property now. And I actually, if I were a neighbor, I think I would rather live there next to it with the current plan than with the previous plan. And I know that it'd be really great if we could give young families lots of space for kids to run around, but in Tigard, unfortunately, we're running out of space. So I do like the fact that that you will have homes that are available to people under 55 to be right next to the elementary school. I think that's a really smart plan. And grateful for all of the details that go around the natural elements that are being preserved. So thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Roberts, your thought?
Yeah, boy, I was on the fence too. I'm slightly on the side now of approval. I was worried about the loss of 55, but you know, both the last commissioner's comments I think kind of echo for me. So I'm now in favor of it. You know, one side comment, I have a question that maybe for Tom and a side comment, and that is, when we hold these, we almost always get people who are opposed writing letters and calling in. We never hear from the people who are for. And I don't know if that's just a bias towards action for those who want to stop something, and the people who are for it just assume it's going to happen. I don't know what that dynamic is, but I don't want it to color our clarity of thought. And my question and I think it's maybe for Tom, is what happens if this doesn't get approved? What is the outcome? Does that mean that they proceed with the previous one, or does everything just stop until they submit something new? What's the outcome if they said no?
So or they go to the city commissioner above us and disregard, because that happened to us before.
So procedurally, if you were to deny their application, I would anticipate that the applicant would appeal your decision to City Council, and then we would have another public hearing before City Council, and the council would have a discussion of the merits and hear the applicant's arguments as to why they think the council should approve it. And we as staff, it puts us in an interesting position because we go and present your decision and try to be as true to your decision as possible, as well as informing them what the original staff decision was. So we give them the full history.
Thank you.
And again, it's another good spot for me as a reminder to the Planning Commission, if you're going along in the route of deciding to deny it or make some major changes to it or add major conditions, you need to let us as staff know upon what approval criteria you're basing that decision, what approval criteria you think the applicant is not meeting, or what criteria are not being met so that you're adding conditions or making changes. So just a reminder.
Got it. Thank you.
And I will retroactively open the deliberation to allow staff to answer some limited questions.
No, you did. You can ask me procedural questions. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
You just can't introduce new evidence. That's all.
Okay.
But you can ask staff procedural questions.
Sounds fair. Thank you, Tom. I think Commissioner Dick and Miranda still have more to say, or they didn't lower their hand.
I actually do want to speak during the discussion.
Okay, go ahead.
You know, Shook and Watson K7 aren't here. I feel like had to step up. I really appreciated that we had some feedback from our constituents, and we had the ability to advocate and ask, or, you know, make sure that their questions that they were asking were fully answered here in this forum. And I appreciate the staff and our presenters that obviously they have made great efforts in order to communicate their plans and their procedures by them coming back and talking to us. That means everyone's doing their best job. You know, having been in the visioning for River Terrace 2.0, personally, of course, I would like more public gathering spaces, but as our code is written, this is hitting the letter of the law. And if I were a voting member, I would be voting to approve. My personal desires for more true multiplexes in the terminology of them being rentals, and to have less, you know, more than just condos and purchasable homes, and more accessible dwelling units. That's pressure we as the commission need to push back on city staff on, you know, for our visionings and our future changes in code. So I just want to thank everyone for being so invested today. And
thank you, Commissioner Miranda. Yeah, so for me, I agree with Commissioner Jackson in that the way I listen to the comments are more about adding the additional 18 homes than the fact that it's going to be losing the 55 plus community. So I don't think losing the 55 community was the main concern, for at least for the three callers. But going back to the explanation provided by staff and applicants, even if we just stick with the current code, they have to build up to 418 units. So actually, with this plan development, we're actually drastically reducing the amount of unit built there, while building all those big open space for the public that without plan development would not be there. So because of that, I really like what the applicant has proposed, and I will vote to approve it. And I think parking is always a concern, but as Commissioner Miranda pointed out, the applicant is, you know, follow the code, follow the law, and I think they also mentioned that they build more than a required parking space, 4 times the amount. So I think we cannot deny them based on the amount of parking space. And actually, I remember in 2018, I expressed concern about the way they calculate on-street parking. Is they took the whole community as a whole, and just said this whole community requires 353 parking, and that's it. But as I mentioned earlier, I think they actually thought more about, you know, what section of the development needs more on-street parking, and they planned it that way accordingly. So I like that better. So in terms of on-street parking, I think they actually did a better job than last time. Anything else? Overall, I think what the applicant requests in terms of adjustment is appropriately matched by the public benefit that the public will receive. So I think it's the public benefit versus adjustment ratio is appropriate. So for those reasons, I will approve the application. So, commissioners, we have a concept plan to approve and a detailed plan, including the subdivision and temporary permit. So any commissioner want to try to make two motions? Commissioner Roberts?
Yes, thank you. So I move for approval of the, I think I'm phrasing this correctly, the plan development review, case number PDR 2021-00003, and adoption of findings and conditions of approval contained in the staff report and based on the testimony received.
Actually, for the concept plan, there was no approval condition, but you are moving forward motion to approve the concept plan right now.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So commissioners, Commissioner Roberts has moved forward a motion to approve the concept plan in case number PDR 2021-0003. So do we have a second?
Commissioner Jackson, seconds.
Commissioner Jackson, second. Before I ask you to vote, do we have any further debates or questions? Okay, so everybody take a second to locate your raise hand button. Those in favor, please press the button. Okay, those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, please keep your hands up. So please keep your hands up. Thank you. So those in favor are Commissioner Burke, Commissioner Jackson, Commissioner Roberts, and Commissioner Hu. Okay, please put your hands down. Those opposed, please raise your hand. Those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Commissioner Quinones opposed. So the motion to approve the concept plan passes 4-1. All right, so now we are considering the detailed plan, which includes the subdivision and the temporary use permit. Commissioner Roberts, would you like to make a motion?
I would be happy to. So I move for approval of the detailed plan, including the subdivision preliminary plat SUB 2021-00004 and the temporary use permits TUP 2021-00010 through 00017. And adoption of the findings and conditions of approval contained in the staff report based on the testimony received.
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. So we have a motion for approval of the detailed plan in application number PDR 2021-3, subdivision SUB 2021-4, temporary use permit TUP 2021-10 through 17, and adoption of the finding and conditions of approval contained in the staff report based on the testimony received. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Jackson, seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson, second. Do we have any questions or clarification or debates before we vote? Okay, I see none. So commissioners, please take a few seconds to locate your raise hand button. And if you are in favor of the motion, please raise your hand right now and leave it on. Okay, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, please leave your hands on. So those in favor are Commissioner Brooke, Commissioner Jackson, Commissioner Roberts, and Commissioner Hu. Okay, please lower your hands. Thank you. Those opposed, please raise your hand. Commissioner Brooke, do you mean to lower your hand? Yes.
Sorry, yeah, I lowered it.
Thank you. Okay, those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Commissioner Quinones, opposed? Thank you. So the motion passed 4-1. All right, so both motion passed. Thank you. Thank you, staff. Thank you, applicant. And if you have any question or about the, so if you wish to appeal, please contact the planning division for explanation of the appeal requirements. Thank you. All right. Other business. Tom?
Good evening. So other business, you've seen the rolling calendar that went out, and we have a lot of work coming our way. We added the extra meeting this month, so we're doing first, third, and last Mondays. We've got a mix of big, seems like they're all big current planning development projects, and then two really big legislative projects, the Washington Square Regional Center, which you've been being briefed on all along, and the TSP, the Transportation System Plan, which you've also had many briefings on. So it's exciting for those two projects to be coming to you to get hopefully your approval and a good discussion about what's going on there. The Washington Square plan has really come together well right now. I'm really pleased with where that is and where it's going to go, and I think you'll be very happy when you get to see it. And the TSP as well. I think there's a lot of good work going on there. We're also probably going to carry that busyness into at least the first month of next year and maybe into February. There's another big River Terrace plan development coming in. It's the last of the former Polygon ones, and it's the last piece, the last missing piece of River Terrace Boulevard, and the trail. So that's really exciting, and that'll be coming in. The application's in now. It's incomplete, I think, at the moment, or it's in completeness review right now. So that will likely be coming to you in January. And then we've got a big comp plan amendment for the downtown Universal Plaza with a trail. So yeah, we've got a very busy schedule, and I appreciate all of you who have been able to accommodate us with the extra meeting. And I will try to avoid yet another extra meeting in January, but it's always difficult in January because we've got the first Monday is always often is right after the whole holiday time period, and then we've got the third Monday is always a holiday, so we lose that day. So the schedule gets a little off. So we may be looking at a January, I believe it's 24th. That's the week after, which it would be the fourth Monday rather than the third Monday. So, but as that starts to come together, we will let you know. Yes, Commissioner Dick, you have a question?
I do. For December, the Monday, December 20th, there's nothing listed there. Or is that one not going to be a meeting evening? Third Monday?
Correct.
So that one will remain blank. You're not going to add anything in there
As far as I know.
that you know of. I'm coming. No.
It's usually hard to get. I'm searching for my calendar. Yeah, that one's a tough one.
Yeah, it's just before the
Oftentimes.
holiday. That was why I was asking if that's why it's blank.
And I think, no, never mind. I got that mixed up again. We're having a meeting on the 13th, but that's the land use hearings officer. So
Yeah,
I
that's
gotta
not.
quit getting that mixed up. But that's my schedule, not your schedule.
Thank you. I was just curious why it was open and you've moved into January, so.
It's hard to get a quorum.
Okay, thank you.
We barely have a quorum today, so.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't have anything beyond that. Coming into the end of the year, I think we've got 7 applications that we're going to be doing interviews for in a couple weeks for the one open position, Commissioner Brooks' position, and also Commissioner Roberts. His 4-year term is up, but he is also reapplied, so he will be one of the 7. And we may be losing another commissioner, so those I think it's a really good pool of candidates. So and it's a completely new system now. It's that the basically central administration of the city has taken over, although I'll still be on the the selection committee, but it'll be just myself and Councillor Shaw. I think, well, that might have been how it was last time, but previously the mayor would often join with on the interviews for planning commission, but now it's just myself and Councillor Shaw. And we have, it's just a little more formalized. So, and because we're so busy with these things, I don't anticipate having us do any more, any near-term, mid-term joint meetings with council, or, we can't really sneak any kind of trainings in or anything like that right now, but we'll keep some things on the back burner if things slow down again. That's really all I have. Is there anything? Oh, somebody had a question that I could respond to now. Did we cover that question? That relatively generic question? I think that was Commissioner Roberts. Did you get that, all of your question answered about what happens if you deny an application and appeals?
I did, yes, thanks. I mean, effectively, it has to be for a reason that's, if it's not compliant with something that's already stipulated, I guess is the way it is. I mean, if it fits, if it meets the requirements, it meets the letter of the law, then we need, or if it doesn't, then we need to call out where that variance is, and that's what would allow it to not be done. I'm not really articulating it, but that's.
And I always put it very formally about meeting the approval criteria, if it does or if it doesn't. And one of the reasons why these particular cases come to the Planning Commission is because the approval criteria for these types of cases happen to be very discretionary. So, one planning commissioner's opinion as to whether they're meeting the test or meeting the criteria may be different from other planning commissioners or from the staff. So, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I bring it up so that everybody's thinking in those terms. So when you're thinking when you're debating and when you're discussing that you have come to a conclusion that you're opposed to, say, a staff recommendation for approval, that you've phrased that in a way that you tie it back to approval criteria.
So it's within that framework. That would totally make sense.
Certainly within your purview to be opposed. That's not the issue. It's how you frame that.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. That's all I have. Oh, there's a question.
My question is, have you checked out that website? I'm heaven.
You like that?
The active permits is so easy to navigate. I'm happy as can be. Thank you. Thank you,
Good.
Tiger.
Thank you. That's good feedback. I'll pass that on to our communications folks and all the staff that worked hard on that.
Yeah. Check it out, folks.
All right, I think that's it. All right, thank you, Tom. Thank you, commissioners. Thanks, Doreen. Thanks, Keelan. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
It's great. You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Good meeting.
Bye.
Night, Doreen.
Good night.
Bye.